Hello, everybody, and welcome to this month's edition of the Watch Club. We're the monthly filmmaker interview series of the Newburyport Documentary Film Festival. I'm program director James Sullivan. We're brought to you, as always, by the Ford Hall Forum, which is the longest continuously operating public lecture series in the country. We thank them, as we always do, and we thank you for watching and for your donations. Don't forget to subscribe and like our YouTube channel so you get updates on our monthly interview series. We are here today very excited to welcome the director and or co-directors, we will find out in a minute, of Billy Joel and So It Goes, which is the brand new 2-part, 5-hour epic story of Billy Joel that was done for HBO by our guests, filmmakers Jessica Levin and Susan Lacy. I'm going to introduce them in just a moment. But first, we're just going to take a look at the trailer for those of you who maybe haven't had a chance to sit down and carve through the 5 hours yet. Steve?
Sometimes it's alien to me, this guy Billy Joel. I don't know who that is or what that is.
Sing us a song, you're the piano man.
I'm reminded of it when I go walk on the street.
You got us feeling all right.
Oh, right, I'm that guy.
Back then, his whole life was the band.
We just wanted to make as much noise as possible. I didn't know one person who liked what we were doing. I loved it. I wanted to put together a group of New York musicians.
They were a bunch of hooligans from Long Island.
My own history as a musician started with me hearing classical music. Uptown Girl. It could have been a Mozart piece.
Are you the man singing Uptown Girl?
That's me. Here I am dating this supermodel. Me? I'm from Hicksville.
You feel the enormity of the situation grow.
When I first heard Billy, it was like, wait a minute, who's this?
Billy's melodies are better than mine.
He had a great sense of drama. He had the magic.
There are certain traumas that one never gets over.
There's an underlying rage. They wiped out my family. I'm still trying to put the pieces together. I didn't know my father at all, from 8 years old until I was in my 20s. I've had a lot of hard lessons in my life. I should have been worth this, and I was worth this. And I hit the pavement. Kaboom. I was amazed that I was still alive. I learned life is a fight.
I don't care what you say anymore.
If there was a skeleton key to unlocking what's behind the songs,
Go ahead with your own life, leave me alone.
it's my relationships with others.
He cares about the human experience. He wrote songs that matter.
I think music saved my life. It gave me a reason to live.
I don't care what you say anymore. This is my life.
Everything I've done and everything I've lived through has somehow found its way into my music.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Watch Club Jessica Levin, co-director of Billy Joel and So It Goes. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, James. Thanks for having me. And unfortunately, not Susan, because she had some technical difficulties, but also has a house full of grandchildren.
Oh, yeah.
And family. And it just wasn't going to happen. But she said, you will hold down the fort and represent the film. So, but I'm sending my love to Susan. Hopefully when she sees this.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah. Well, thank you, Susan, for making the effort. Yeah, totally understand. No problem. But we're more than happy to have you to talk about this really fun film. So congratulations, first of all. I already said this to you before we went live, but I mean, obviously you're getting such acclaim for this film. Is it expected? Did you think that people were going to become attached to it? It's been so much talk about how much fun people are having watching this thing.
I'm glad people are having fun. We had fun making it. To answer your question, were we surprised about the reception of the film? Of course, every film you make, you really don't know how it's going to be received once it leaves your little cocoon of everyone that you've been sort of, making the cocktail, so to speak, baking the cake. And then when it comes out, you're sort of always a little bit on edge until it goes out into the world.
Mhm.
I think we have the magic of Billy Joel at our backs. I
Mhm.
will say that straight off the bat. He's a person that reaches people,
Mhm.
and people have so many touch points of connection with Billy throughout their lives, and multiple generations of people, whether they learned Billy Joel on the piano, as a kid when they were, taking piano lessons, or whether their parents listened to Billy Joel growing up, or whether they discovered him on their own,
Right.
through whatever classic hit station or
Sure.
streaming, and different generations connect with different songs, which is
Yeah.
another interesting thing about it.
Right.
I don't know, the film talks a lot about the song Vienna.
Yeah.
Vienna, which is a beloved song now, was not a hit when it
Right.
came out.
Right.
It kind of went nowhere. It was just like a sort of an unusual ballad. But now today, it's one of the songs that's most requested
Mm.
when he tours and he goes live, or when there are any kind of, request opportunities. Vienna really just connects with people. And they think of it, it's a coming of age sort of song, and it's a song that's very introspective and philosophical. But what happens in the film in part two, if
Yeah.
you haven't seen it,
Right.
in part two, we learn about how connected Vienna was to
Yeah.
Billy's experience finding his father, because his father had left the family and had ended up in Vienna. And Billy went and found him, and then shortly thereafter wrote this song.
Yeah.
I don't want to give too much away, but it's a big thematic element in the film, is Billy and his relationship with his parents and his family.
Well, you can't give too much away, Jessica, because 5 hours is almost like not enough. Like, there's so much material, and he's so good on camera.
He's fun to watch, isn't he?
Oh yeah, very. I've been writing about arts and culture for newspapers for my whole life. And 20 years ago, I was at the San Francisco Chronicle, and I was leaving and coming back to Boston to move back with my family. And one of the last articles that I wrote for my job at the Chronicle was to interview Billy, because he was doing the Twyla Tharp version of Moving Out, the dance, setting a dance performance to his music. And he was so much fun to talk to. And it was kind of like my outgoing from that job. And he's just a good storyteller. And he seems to know what people want to hear. So I think a really important question that you probably get asked a lot. Is Susan texting you?
Nope. I'm just writing a note.
Oh, okay. I think really important, and I also think you probably have answered this question a bunch, but how did you two convince him to spend so much time and let you dig so deeply into his family photos and all the footage, and sit down for multiple interviews? I'm guessing that something had to do, like you mentioned that Susan is from Sag Harbor, or lives in Sag Harbor. So that had something to do with it, I'm guessing. But beyond that, how did you get him to agree to this sort of like monumental project?
Well, James, there are a lot of questions in there.
How'd you get him to agree?
Okay, so first of all, as far as Billy participating in this project, it was a little bit of a slow build. Susan Lacy, as I'm sure you know, created the series American Masters on PBS, and then we moved over to HBO about a little bit over 10 years ago. And we've made several films about, very high profile artists, Jane Fonda, and Steven Spielberg. And then I think that was part of the reason that Billy agreed to do the film, was just purely based on Susan's reputation. Susan and I have been working together for 25 years. I know that's hard to believe, but true, because we're so young.
And you just mentioned she has grandchildren. She had them really young, right?
Yes, exactly. She was like 5.
She was right.
No, so we, so Susan had been approached and had reached out during American Masters but it never quite happened with Billy.
Yeah.
And then she had met with his manager, or not his manager, excuse me, his lighting director, who's his creative director,
Oh,
who
yeah.
ended up being an executive producer on the film, Steve Cohen,
Keep going. Yeah. Right.
and actually appears as an interviewee in the film.
Right.
He's a close friend of Billy's.
Right.
So they had met, and then Sony had called Susan. So all these different sort of things were sort of in the water or in the air. And then Sean Hayes and Todd Milliner's company, Hazy Mills, had approached Playtone, Tom Hanks's company,
Oh, right. Right.
and said, do you want to co-produce this documentary simultaneously?
Mm-hmm.
And Playtone, Tom Hanks and Gary Getzman came to Susan and said, we want to do this documentary, but we won't do it unless you direct it, because you are the right person to do this. Because they felt that, that she was a filmmaker who knew how to tell an artist's story.
Right.
And that, Billy has been covered in the press for 50 years. This is a guy who has not spent a lot of time being self-reflective and being, he deflects, he's humor, he's glib, he's funny, but he hadn't really dug deep. And I think that they felt that Susan was going to be able to draw that out of him and create a story really about the artist, not just about the veneer and the thing that he wanted people to see. And I think that, really Susan did the interviews. There were about 10 of them. And I would say, the first couple of interviews were not tentative. I wouldn't say he was in it, but, she chose to start with some topics that were a little less controversial.
Mm-hmm.
They spoke about classical music.
Right.
They spoke about Billy's family story in Germany, which is a completely unknown story, which is also connected to Vienna that I was talking about earlier.
Right.
And so that he began to understand as time went on that we were taking him seriously as an artist. This wasn't a tabloid, story. This wasn't, we weren't kind of going for the jugular. We were really trying to turn the story over and understand, who this artist was. Who is this artist who had 33 top 40 hits, who has been able to connect with people throughout the globe, through multiple generations? Who is this guy? Who is he? Not just a series of jokes and self-deprecation, but who is he underneath all that? And that's what we were going for.
It doesn't get much more lofty, maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's not the right word, but than American Masters in terms of there's Behind the Music, which everybody watched, incessantly 20
and
20
then
years ago or whatever.
the dark years.
Right. And then that's the bottom end, and the top end is American Masters, right? Like quality storytelling about creative people. Did Billy, you kind of said this, but I'm wondering if he said, oh, well, the American Masters on so-and-so, I really loved that. Like, did he know anything about the series, or had he watched?
He had watched a lot of the series.
Yeah.
This is a guy that is very interested in history, cultural history. He's a big reader.
Yeah.
He watches a lot. He watches the History Channel incessantly. So yeah, he had seen some films. Susan had sent him some specific ones for him to watch, and he had seen some of the films we'd done for HBO over the last decade. Right. So I think he did feel in good hands, but you have to keep in mind that Billy has had a very contentious relationship with the press over the years. It has not been smooth sailing.
Right.
There are a lot of people he has felt betrayed over the years. We talk about in the film how, early on in his career, he really put his dukes up with the press, and he used to literally rip up reviews on stage or read them to the audience when he thought that they were ridiculous or off base or whatever it was. So, and then he, as he says in the film, you don't pick a fight with someone who orders ink by the barrel. He says it was a big mistake, for me to do that. But he was a guy who was, he was a boxer when he was a kid to defend himself.
Right.
And I think he's always had, he's always had that chip on his shoulder relationship. Point being, the press to him, he's always been a little bit, what am I giving away here? What should I say? What should I not say?
Sure.
But I think, as time went on and he understood that, I think he said to Susan at one point, after one of the interviews, he said, boy, you really go deep
Right.
and she said, well, you're going to have to go deep too.
Right.
And I think that was the thing, is that he had to match, the level of filmmaking that we were trying to achieve, and try
Right.
to do more than just the behind the music, or
Right.
what you would expect.
Right. I'm just going to take a quick moment to say that those of you who are watching live, you have the opportunity, if you want to ask Jessica a question yourself, all you have to do is type it into the chat and I will relay it to Jessica. So there's that. But in the meantime, I'm going to keep asking the questions myself. Yeah, I feel like the going deep thing, I want to go into that for another second, because like I mentioned that I spoke with him. I did an interview with him 20 years ago because it was specifically about the Twyla Tharp thing. So he's talking about that, right? He's not, or, normally he would talk about his new album. Why'd you write Vienna? Why'd you write, Still Rock and Roll to Me, whatever. So he's talking about the thing that's happening now, the music world, the music, what the pop music sounds like at the moment that he's making this current record. This is a whole other thing where he's like, it's like soup to nuts, right? Like, birth to where he is now. And there's an incredible amount of drama in his life that he, right. And the women, that's a huge part of the story. I think, like, Elizabeth in the first of the 2 episodes, herself is such a striking character and person, obviously she had a lot to do with his early success. Obviously they still feel for each other. Obviously they moved on.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not, of course,
Pretty extraordinary collaboration.
Pretty extraordinary collaboration. Exactly. And I think that's a huge part of why at least the first episode works as well as it does.
Absolutely. And I can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Elizabeth basically did not speak about Billy from the time that they split up until our documentary.
Right.
She literally did not speak about him. Her son, who's Billy's stepson, who you meet in the film, he had girlfriends that didn't even know the backstory about, it was off of their radar. They lived in California. They did not. So Susan approached Elizabeth. Steve Cohen made the introduction. Susan had several dinners with Elizabeth and tried to explain to her that we are going to tell this story and we need you to be a part of it, because otherwise it's not going to be honest and it's not going to be the truth. And we were looking for truth. We were looking for honesty. We were looking for the true journey that Billy had been on. And a lot of that early journey had been hidden because Elizabeth hadn't spoken, and we needed her perspective to understand the true backstory of Billy Joel, which was not a quick rise to fame.
Right.
It was a long road. It was a tough road. And I think, Susan convinced Elizabeth that she needed to be a part of this film. And so she decided to participate. And once she decided to participate, she kind of went in, jumped in with 2 feet. And she was very prepared. She did her research and tried to recall, to bring her recollections to present day. And I think what's so fascinating about Elizabeth is that she just is she was a juggernaut. She was a woman rock manager at a time where there were very few, if any. She was fighting an uphill battle with Billy, who was this guy who couldn't be put in a box. He wasn't the Rolling Stones. He wasn't Bruce Springsteen. He wasn't, he sort of had this eclectic.
He wasn't Elton John, which he
wasn't Elton John, which we talk about in the movie, although a lot of people wanted to compare him to Elton John. And so she had to figure out how to take this artist and push him on the record company and make sure that he did not fall off of anyone's radar, and keep saying, this guy has incredible talent. You need to understand, and tried to bring him. So she did just such an incredible job with, it's hard to know if you separate those two, you don't know what the sliding doors story would have been without her in the picture. And I think that their collaboration, and they each brought something to the table which was equally important in that moment.
Right. I've always loved the song Big Shot, and I was so glad that they both talked about it. It's kind of the way I heard it, but you don't know, so like it sounds like if you listen to the lyrics, he says, you know, they were so impressed with your Halston dress and the people that you knew at Elaine's.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's about my ex-wife. But it kind of always seemed obvious to me that he was also very much directing that at himself. And they've kind of both said, yeah, that's about both of us to a certain extent, you know?
It's great that Billy
yes,
admits that.
Yeah. He doesn't
we
just
deal
say,
with the
oh, yeah,
drink-
that's
I
my
mean, we
ex-wife.
deal with the
Like, yeah.
drinking in the film, and
Mhm.
he, you know, to talk about the fact that that song, you know, all the way back when he
Mhm.
was first getting started, you know, alcohol was there, and
Yeah.
it was a part of the story,
Right.
was sort of a character in the story in a
Right.
way. And I think that hearing about those how connected those songs were to his life. His songs are so autobiographical, and I think that's
Yep.
something that people really don't realize, and
Right.
something we really wanted to bring out in the movie. When you really look at the lyrics and you really look at where his inspirations came from, they're basically ripped from the diary of his life
Right.
in a way that you wouldn't know. However, they're also incredibly universal. So, you know, we had to, you know, we wanted to sort of, you know, show that Billy was really plumbing, you know, his own emotions, you know,
Right.
for his artistic output.
And I think that might be one of the biggest appeals of the film is that you see, as he's describing certain periods of recording or his, you know, the latest songs that he was working on or whatever, that they are very, I mean, if we're talking about him being guarded in the press or in interviews, as you know, most entertainers who get to that level are to some extent, and that's what people knew about Billy Joel for the last 50 years. And suddenly you're hearing him explain his entire life in large part through the songs that everybody knows.
Very much so. And I think that's a really important thing to bring out, James, because, you know, Billy, so were certain things Billy couldn't talk about.
Yeah.
I'll just say that. It's not
Right.
that he didn't want to.
Yeah.
He just, you know, that is the essence of who Billy is a person who has used music and the piano as almost a companion.
Yeah.
A
The only
companion
way he knew how to
to
talk about them was
his
to
life,
write a song
and
about
he
it. Right.
put his emotions and he put his angst into the songs and into the music. And I think it's his Elizabeth's son Sean who says in the movie, if he could express his emotions in words to other people, he might not have been able to write those songs.
Right.
So he did give us that,
Yeah,
even
that's
though there
it.
were a lot of really fraught relationships and a lot of struggles for him
Mhm.
personally. He really put it all into the music and the lyrics.
We actually only have a couple minutes left, and I can't believe that because I feel like I
How
could
is that
talk to you.
possible?
I don't know. I feel like I could talk to you for 2 hours about this, but you have other things to do, including promoting this film to in other outlets. I want to say thank you for bringing the Janes to the world because I think you produced and Susan executive produced. And
Yes.
we had Emma
Yes.
and Tia, the co-directors of the Janes, which is about the women's movement and specifically about
Yes.
abortion in the pre-Roe. And now we're in the post-Roe days, I guess,
know.
sadly,
It's
right? But I
just
mean,
horrendous. That, you know, that film was made before
I
that.
know.
Okay. Before that job decision came down.
Right. So
So.
we had Tia and Emma on this program 3 years ago when the film came out. And so it's just a pleasure to talk to you because, you know, in part because you brought us that film as well. And that is an excellent, if folks haven't seen it, look up the Janes.
The
It's
Janes.
another HBO
Yes.
project.
Yeah.
I have a quick question about another song of Billy's. It's the title of your project. It's not
Yeah.
exactly one of his best known songs. And I
No.
can't remember if I missed something, but And So It Goes was a phrase. So it's Billy Joel, And So It Goes. And So It Goes was a phrase that Kurt Vonnegut always used. Did he talk about that at all?
He didn't, although I'm pretty sure. I mean, Billy is so literate. I'm
Yeah.
sure that there was some part of it,
Yeah.
part of him that took that title.
Right.
You know, Susan was very convinced from the close to the beginning of our process that
Yeah.
And So It Goes should be the title of the film.
Hmm.
It was not the expected one, but
Right.
it just really encapsulates Billy's life philosophy
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, which is his experience with relationships, his
Right.
experience with love,
Right.
And his experience with
Well,
betrayals.
all of it, family, career, all of that. Yeah.
And, the song is sad,
Hmm.
but very beautifully written. The melody is just one of the most simple yet sophisticated yet very heartfelt. It has this. Billy talks about in the film how that song is full of suspensions, so it has like an unresolved chord and then it
Right.
resolves.
Right.
And I think that's very metaphorical because it's very much about how he looks at life. And
Yeah.
I'm sure part of it had to do with his upbringing. He was raised by a single mother.
Sure.
His father left the family when he was just 8 years old, and never really gave him the satisfaction of appreciating Billy and his musical talent. And I think
Hmm.
that really hurt Billy a lot, and it's something he carries with him. I mean, they really never were able to connect, even when he went to find him. And I think it really hurt him that he had to go find his father.
Right.
His father didn't
Sure.
come to find him. But growing up with a single mom who had some mental illness challenges.
Right.
I mean, people think she was bipolar. I think she was diagnosed later. And he just really had that uncertainty. And I feel like that infuses a lot of his music, which is it's great now, but kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. And in some ways his story is sad, but in some ways it's just so relatable.
Totally.
It's
Yeah.
like life is messy,
That's exactly right. Yep.
and
Yeah.
Billy is messy, and he admits it. At
Right.
the end of the film, he says, I'm still trying.
Right.
Trying to figure it out. I may never figure it out,
Right.
but I'm going to keep on trying. And it's
That's all you can do. Keep trying. Yeah.
he's in a beautiful place right now.
Hmm.
He's got a really strong relationship.
Yeah.
His wife is a very strong woman. You talked earlier about the presence of women in his life.
Yeah.
And how these strong women in his life have kind of had a very important role in each stage of his life and his career. And look at the fact that he trusted two women to tell
Mhm.
his story, not
Right.
the expected choice,
Right.
not the expected choice, but he put trust in us, and I think women have been his champion, throughout the years.
Right. Well, and not just tell the story, but tell it so exceptionally well. I'm gonna end with Cheryl's comment, which we see on the screen here. The documentary is excellent, so well done, and very interesting to watch. That's what I'm hearing from everybody who's watching this thing. I want to listen to all his songs again, and that's the other thing that I'm sure is happening. You're hearing from a lot of people.
Well, re-listening to the catalog now,
Right.
you have a completely new,
Right.
perspective on the motivations and a much deeper understanding. And that was really our goal in the film, and I hope we achieved it.
Yeah, no question about that. Thanks, Cheryl, for the comment. Thank you so much, Jessica, for talking to us. Susan, when you watch this stuff, well, I hope you watch the interview at some point to tell Jessica how
We missed you.
Yeah, exactly. But we missed you, but really thrilled that you were able to do this interview with us. And Jessica, we wish you all the best, and we hope to talk to you about the next project. I'm not going to ask you what it is, but I'm sure you're working on something pretty cool with Susan next. And you guys have already done so much great work in the documentary field. We
Thank you.
look forward to seeing what comes next.
Pleasure to meet you, James.
Yeah, you too. Hang on for a second. I'm just going to take a quick moment to say thanks, everybody. The Watch Club, thanks for joining us on this special lunchtime edition. I was thinking about bringing a sandwich, but I didn't do that. Of the Watch Club. We will not have a Watch Club. Those of you who are regular watchers know that we take a break during September for our actual festival. Newburyport Doc Fest this year is September 26th through the 28th. So we'll see you back here if you're not with us in Newburyport in October. I'm going to take one more quick moment to thank our sponsor, the Ford Hall Forum, and we'll see you next time in the Watch Club.